Hi viewers, welcome to Anandha Educational Academy. I am requesting you all my viewers, please subscribe our channel and touch bell icon to get notifications. Thank you. Today we are ready to discuss. Our topic is National Movement, the early phase, which is in 8th class Social Studies. The national movement in India was an important epoch in the history of India, as it is helped to weld diverse people and section of societies into one nation. All the sections came together not only to fight against the British rule but also to build a new India. The revolt of 1857, in which the soldiers, ordinary peasants, artisans, and the landlords and the princes joined the struggle against the British rules. While the movement was opposed to the British, it did not have any new version of the country. It in fact wanted to restore the rules of the old kings and queens in India and also old social orders. After English education was introduced during the late 19th century, in some major cities like Kolkata, Madras, Bombay, a new consciousness began to develop. The intellectuals of the time opposed the inequalities and the injustice of the old social system. They wanted a democratical political order, and at the same time they wanted to point out the exploitation and the injustice caused by the British rule and fight to end it. This was the beginning of the national movement in India. The seeds of a new consciousness were shown in the second half of the 19th century. The educated Indians, after understanding the nature of the British rule and its impact on India, become more and more of the British policies in India. They began to come together and discuss these issues and also formed associations for this. In 1866, Dadabhai Nauroji organized the East India Association in London to discuss the Indian question. During 1866 to 1885, various leaders like Suresh Nath Banerjee, Justice M.D. Rande, Badruddin Tyagi, K.C. Telang, G. Subramaniam organized associations in Kolkata, Pune, Bombay and Madras to discuss the problems faced by Indians in those provinces. These associations had nationalized zeal and tried to unite the intellectuals. Though many of these associations functioned in specific parts of the country, their goals were started as a goals of all the people of India, not those of any one region, one community or one class. They worked with the idea that people should be a modern consciousness and a key feature of nationalism. In other words, they believed that the India people should be empowered to take decision regarding their affairs. Many of these intellectuals also lead campaigns against some British policies like taxes and textiles, racial discriminations against Indians, repressive laws against Indian newspapers. They realized that importance of discussing the policies of government and organizing campaign to change them. Let us know about Indian National Congress. All these provincial nationalist intellectuals came together in the first session of the Indian National Congress at Bombay in December 1885. The session was presided over by the W.C. Banerjee, attended by 72 delegates from different parts of the India. The early leaders Dadabhai Nauroji, Firoz Shah Mohta, Badruddin Tyagi, W.C. Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, Ramesh Chandra Dutt, G. Subramanya Iyer, among other were largely from Bombay, Madras, Calcutta. A.O. Hume, a retired British official, also played an important role in establishing the Congress. The leaders of the Congress realized that the foremost task before them was to build a nationalist consciousness among the diverse people of India and unite them. At the same time, they realized that this unity could be built only by the accommodating the special requirements of different regions and religious communities of India. They therefore decided to hold the Congress sessions in different parts of the country every year and not to pass any resolutions which was objected to by any one religious group. The second major objective of the early Congress was to create a common political platform or program around which political workers in different parts of the country could gather and conduct their political activities, educating and mobilizing people on an all India basis. This was to be accomplished by taking up these grievances and fight for the rights which Indians had in common in relations to their rulers. They studied the grievances of people and wrote appeal to the government and also used them to educate the people about their political rights. The third major objective was to promote democratical ideas and functioning in India. The Indian National Congress functioned democratically, discussing all the issues and tried to create consensus or sometimes use voting also. In 1886, 436 delegates were elected to the Congress by different local organizations and groups, indicating its popularity in 1 year. Hereafter, the Indian National Congress met every year in December in different parts of the country. The number of delegates soon increased to thousands. There were very few women who participated in the Congress, like Kadambari Ganguly, who was the first woman graduate from Calcutta. During the first 20 years, the Congress was led by leaders who are known as moderate nationalists. The moderates urged the government to introduce a number of reforms. They demanded a greater voice for the Indians in the government and in administration. They demanded that Indians be placed in high positions in the government. Leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt and Rande studied the economical impact of the British rule and they concluded that the British were draining India of her wealth through taxes and other means and leaving the poorer and poorer. They drew attention to the problem of poverty and famines and blamed it on the British policies of excessive land revenue, export of grains. The Congress passed many resolutions on the salt tax, treatment of Indian laborers abroad, and the suffering of forest dwellers caused by an interforcing forest administrations. The early leaders were convinced of the need for the national industrial development to end poverty in India. The moderate leaders reached out the people in different parts of the country by holding lectures, meetings and tours. They believed that the British were committed to freedom and justice and would accept the demands when expressed properly. In short, it may be said that they adapted a policy of pray and petition and protest. Often they were not able to persuade the government to change, but in the process formed Indian opinion on important issues. This was very important for the future growth of the Indian national movement. Let us know about the extremist phase, that is known as Swadeshi Movement. With the start of the Swadeshi Movement around the 1903, the Indian national movement took a major leap forward. One major trigger for the movement was the proposal for the partition of Bengal into East and West Bengal in 1903 by Curzon. The nationalists immediately saw this as a capital act by the government to divide the Bengal people and also weaken the national movement. Even the ordinary people of Bengal were energized by this act and took to street to protest against it. But they were not headed to, and the government partitioned Bengal in 1905. Several protest meetings were held and together they decided to boycott English class and salt. There was a tremendous mass response to this call. Women refused to wear foreign bangles, washermen refused to wash foreign clothes, and even British declined offering which contained foreign sugar. This spontaneous unity of the diverse social groups was the basis of Indian nationalism. The early nationalists were successful in gemmating this nationalism. There was also a call for boycott all government institutions like schools, colleges, courts, and etc. People set up Swadeshi schools and colleges and parallel courts in which they settled their mutual organizations. The idea was to refuse to cooperate with the government and in this way undermine its position. The Swadeshi movement gave tremendous impetus to Indian history. In fact, beginnings were made in the manufacture of Swadeshi salt, sugar, matches and other products on a large scale. The movement gave a stimulus to Prapul Chandra Ray's Bengalis chemical work and encouraged Jamshed Tata of Bengali to open his famous steel plant in Bihar. The textile industry of India in particular received a great impetus from the Swadeshi movement. Let us see the difference between the moderates and the extremists. In the next Congress season 1905, the extremist nationalists led by Bala Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal and the Lala Lajpat Rai were in favor of extending the movement to the rest of India to demand for the full-fledged freedom. Bala Gangadhar Tilak gave a famous slogan, "Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it." They called the earlier strategy as mendicancy. The old leaders called moderate nationalist. The difference between the two sections of leaders grew and eventually led to a split of the Congress into two in the Surat sessions of 1907. The extremist leaders like Tilak were forced to leave the Congress. Soon the government came down heavily upon the extremists and their activities of the Swadeshi movement. Most of the leaders like Tilak were imprisoned and exiled. Gradually the movement petered out. The national movement revived again in 1915 when Tilak came back from his exile and joined hands with the Anabescent to launch a movement for home rule. The two sections of Congress united again in 1916 through the Lucknow Pact. The First World War broke out in 1914 with Britain, France and Russia on one side and Germany and its allies on the other side. It lasted for nearly 5 years till Germany was finally defeated. As the war ended, an era of revolution started in Europe. In India, the war brought greatest suffering for the common people as the British tried to raise funds and resources for the war by raising taxes and exporting foods and other necessities to the armies. This increased the discontent among the people against the British rule. It was under these conditions when the discontent of the people was increasing and the British were getting more repressive. Mahatma Gandhi came back from South Africa and joined the Indian freedom movement. This is the information about national movement, the early phase topic, 8th class standards social studies. Thank you.